know you touched on this a little bit, but as far as the Pac-12, can I just get your initial reaction when you heard about the news of Colorado leaving? And does these changes change the approach or your attitude as far as the coming this season?
Not a big reaction. I mean, I'm trying to remember what they won to affect this conference. I don't remember. Do you remember them winning anything? I don't remember them winning anything. Rooted in substance, not flash. Rooted in substance. Today, we talk with our pads. You talk with your helmet, right? Every moment. The Cinderella story is over, man. Right? They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. There's a difference, right? There's a difference, right? This game ain't gonna be played in Hollywood, it's gonna be played on the grass, right? It's gonna be played on the grass. Let's go.
First up this morning, Coach Prime involved in another shocker. This one's the wrong kind of surprise. I'm about to dig deeper into Oregon 42, Colorado 6 with Michael Urban, Keyshawn Johnson, and Richard Sherman. Good morning, gentlemen, I guess.
Morning, man. I'm surprised you and Michael made
it to work. Morning.
Yeah, great
surprised y'all made it to work.
You know what? I'm here, and I can't wait. Here we go. Woo, woo, woo.
Spicy.
Michael Urban, your thoughts on Oregon 42-6.
Well, let's get the kids on the field some credit because they played well. They played well. All the way around. And we talked about it. We knew it was going to take a Herculean effort from the Colorado to win that football game. I said it would have taken Shedeur Sanders to step out as almost just the next Patrick Mahomes coming in the lead. In order for them to win, he needed to have that kind of a game. Certainly, he couldn't have had that kind of a game, being sacked 7 times, then pressured all day long. Now, we look at the clip that Coach dropped, you know, and that was a hell of a line. Let's get real. They play for clicks. We play for wins. That was a hell of a line. But the truth of it is, it took me back to Tombstone. I love that movie, Tombstone.
Really? Do you?
Doc Holloway said, "My hypocrisy only goes so far." You know, he said this to get clicks. Click. We talking about it right now, buddy. So he knew exactly what he was doing. He was using Deion to Deion. Since everybody is always talking about Colorado. He also knows that he's recruiting against Deion. So he knows he has the better team. He got that team so fired up to go out and play. They mauled Colorado. Every time you saw that offensive line go up against Colorado defensive line, it was like one, and the defensive line was gone. They mauled them. So hey, like Deion said though, you got this win. You got this win. Be happy with this win. But this is the worst you're going to get.
You better get me now.
This is the worst you're going to see.
Okay.
This is the worst you will see.
All I can do is smile in this situation because, look, last week I was hesitant.
You were.
To pick Colorado. But I had to pick Colorado because I can't pick against Deion, against the Buck. I mean, against
you could
Ducks.
If you really wanted to.
Yeah, but I can't. Okay. I can't do that.
All right,
so this was I knew better.
Heart over head.
Yeah,
right?
I knew better. Like Michael said, we knew it was going to take Shedeur and everybody else to do something special.
Absolutely.
In Dan Lanning.
But we've seen it, and we bought into it.
We bought into it. Of course, 100%.
Right, we bought into it.
But the whole click versus wins. Everybody's trying to get wins, and everybody's trying to get clicks.
Right.
Okay? That's part of recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. Right. They have social media department, Skip, inside of the athletic department that specifically sit up all night long trying to figure out how to create something to garner attention.
They're just not doing the job that Bucky's doing over in Colorado.
They're not doing the job that Colorado's doing.
Right.
And when you look at this,
Bucky's Deion little,
when you look at this, Michael, Skip, and Sherm, you're talking about the Cinderella story is over. Really, it's not. It's not over.
No.
And here's why I say it's not. Because they were 1-11 a year ago. They're 3-1 now. They're getting ready to play an opponent in USC that looked like hot garbage against Arizona State the other night.
They did. I agree.
So that is a little nervous for me going to Colorado this weekend to see what that could turn out.
Even though USC is now a 23.5-point favorite.
That's fine.
At Colorado.
That was fine. They was the same at Arizona State and came down to a dogfight.
Yeah.
But when you look at Oregon's football program versus Colorado and Deion, or Colorado better yet, were 1-11. Deion has come in and changed the whole scope of everything. Everything.
And we're not just talking about wins. I'm talking about they're making much money in Colorado right now. They're making more money they've made in probably forever.
So to me, this is a classic bully talking noise in Dan Lanning. I don't care what nobody tell me. Because number one, you can go all the way back to Bellotti. You can start with Chip Kelly. You can go with Mark Helfrich. You can go with Willie Taggart, Mario Cristobal. They established a certain culture at Oregon. Right. It wasn't like Dan came in there and Oregon was at the bottom of the Pac-12 conference and he dug them up and got them the way they are.
See, yes, Phil Knight is also presiding. So you got some deep pockets behind that.
You got crazy deep pockets. Now, it's not to say that this is leftovers from Cristobal as far as players go. Yeah. Because a lot of players have come and gone or whatever. But the foundation of the athletic department, Skip, is already intact. Yep. So you coming in with a typical bully mentality and talking noise. And like Deion say, better get me now. Better get me now.
They better get him now. They better get him now. And you talk about changing the culture. He changed the culture at Colorado. He changed the culture in Boulder. He brought energy. He brought enthusiasm. He brought confidence. He had them at the spring game. He brought excitement to the city. And I think it's more jealousy. You know, you see just jealousy. It's just jealous. Hey, I'm not getting the attention this man got. I came to Oregon and we've done pretty well. Why am I not getting the attention that Deion's getting? Prime doesn't deserve all this. I'm going to hype my team up. They were a top 10 team, 21-point favorites. So understand, you got to find a way to motivate your kids. So I'm not really mad at what he said, but it just reeks of jealousy. It reeks of a guy who is frustrated that he's not getting that kind of attention, that Bo Nix, his quarterback, isn't getting the kind of attention Shador is. And they made a statement. But like Prime has said, they're 7-8 players away, and 5 of them are on that offensive line. From the tackles to the center to the guards. They all are going to have to be replaced and likely get replaced next year with better players. But I mean, I was more concerned about what Colorado was doing early in the game, early in the week when they first got to Oregon. When they first got to the stadium, they went to the stadium, and we talked about all the disrespect Nebraska did and Matt Rule, and when they had that huddle on the Buffalo in Colorado, and Shador made a huge deal about it, you know, and they got into that little tiff early before the game started, and then they go to Oregon. And then one of the kids is sitting there trying to scratch out the O off the field. And it's just like, hey, you know, again, my hypocrisy only goes so far. To what Irv said. It's like you can't sit there and say, hey, you know how disrespectful it is for somebody to go on your logo and do all this crazy stuff, and y'all go walk on these people's logo like they just Rudy Poo. You know what I mean? What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
All right. I don't know for sure if Oregon was made aware that well before the game that some of the Colorado kids were scratching up the big O in the middle of the field. But given this social media age we live in, I'm pretty sure they were made aware of it before the game. All right. I have tried to tell you guys for 2 weeks, there is a deep-rooted sort of a venomous vengeance that is starting to manifest itself against Deion among white coaches, and I'm not going to say they're all white because we saw what Jay Norvell did just 2 weeks ago, right?
You're right.
Okay? It's deep-rooted and seated because Deion didn't pay any dues that they all had to pay.
Correct.
He's simply the greatest athlete who ever played, and he has shattered the mold, as we have talked about, because that's who he is. He is one of the greatest talkers in the history of sports. He is as entertaining an interview as there is in all of sports as we speak. He is playing to his strengths. He is in the midst of the greatest turnaround in college football history, doing it his way. Not Dan Lanning's way, but Dan Lanning that was venomous vengeance. That was real. I don't think he was playing just for clicks. I think he knew exactly where he was going, and he was speaking from his heart of hearts. He says, we are rooted in substance, and they are all about flash. That is not true. They have been well coached. They did not play well coached football on Saturday. But the problem was he did run with it, and it worked because Colorado got buzzsawed right in half from the opening kickoff because Oregon comes out and goes 72 yards in 10 plays and doesn't even go to third down one time. Right. And all of a sudden it's 7-0. And all of a sudden Shadur doesn't have time to breathe, and he goes 3 and out in about 1 minute of clock time. And all of a sudden here they come again. And it gets to be a 3rd and 5 play at the 7, and they stop them. And then if we could see what happened, there's a dumb personal foul committed that kept it from being a 10-0 game. Oh, I'm sorry, our tape just fouled up. But do you remember the play?
Right.
A kid just runs in at the end of the play, slams into an Oregon kid in the back, and it's just silly. You just can't do it. And all of a sudden they score. And what happened? Dan Lanning said, I'm going to humiliate you, Deion Sanders. I'm going to expose you. I'm going to go for 2. It's 13-0. It could have been 14. You just kicked the point. Is there any reason? Did you miss the point on 7-0? No, you didn't. You're going for 2 to just rub their noses in it, right? Okay, here's the 2-point play. And they go for it, and they don't get it, thank God. And then here we come again, and I'm going to skip down to the 4th and 4 play. They're backed up on their 17-yard line. They run a fake punt. They're up 13-0, and they run a fake punt. This is humiliation. That's a big tackle who runs with that ball for 18 yards.
No one there.
Help me out. Is that not trying to pile it on? That's the equivalent of a first quarter run it up play, right?
Well, you know what? In that situation right there, look, it certainly looks that way. But if they're sleeping, and we have scouted them to know when we're in this part of the field and down the distance, and we're going to punt, and they give us the look, and it's going to work perfectly. Why not do it? Why not? Okay. Why not do it?
There's a lot of things that can go wrong in that area of the field. That's
but here's why, though. Because I say why not do it? Because even if it did go wrong, Michael, they're undermanned.
And
that's why you do it. Because they're undermanned.
That's back to Skip's points. You just you could have just turned around and handed the ball off on 4th and 3 and still got that first down. The way they were mauling.
That's true.
Colorado's defensive line. Now, and I want to make sure we're not doing the wrong thing here. And what I mean by that is we need to make sure we're giving Oregon the credit they're due here. Well, let's make sure we're giving.
Well, they played flawless football. I don't know what they could do any better.
And Dan Lanning, I mean, he got them hyped. He got them hyped. They came out, and I was like, woo. I've been waiting to see how Colorado handles this kind of stuff right here, because when you're building up and everybody's talking about you like this, you're going to get everybody's best man.
No question.
Everybody's going to dig down and give you all they have because everybody's talking about you. That was the reality of it. We mentioned here jealousy. We mentioned bully.
Yep.
He did what he needed to do to get his team to victory. Personally, got no problem with that. I call that competitiveness. I want to do what I have to do to get my team to victory. But it goes deeper than that. Now, it goes deeper than that, Skip, you're talking about. He's trying to recruit. He's doing everything. He is embarrassing, Deion. And I want you to know Deion's remembering this. Now, did y'all, on that comment that Deion was making, you saw he slipped this in now. I want to show you all this comment. He slipped it in. He said, yeah. Hey, give him credit. I keep receiving. And he kept it going now. Watch this comment here. Hey, roll his comment. Just watch what he says here when Deion is talking. Right there. I know he's hurting. I mean, he's hurting. So when I text him, Skip, Key, and Sherm, I don't even text him, man, saw the game, anything. I don't even mention it. I just say, hey, man, I know you're thinking about it. I know you'll figure it out. I'm here. You know what I mean? That's all you can say. That's all you can say. Yeah. And he will figure it out. But that part right there, I keep receipts. And you better get me now. He's saying, I'm going to get my lineman, and I'll be back.
Of course. I will be back. This is his first year at the Power 5 level. This is its first year. They're 3-1. We can't sit up here and act like it's all doomed, it's over with, they'll never win another game. That's not true. They played against an Oregon team that is better. There's a better football team.
Bo Nix played.
And you mentioned
Bo Nix played well.
You know, you were talking about the jealousy and the way picking these coaches and how Deion got there. This is interesting you said that. I didn't want to interrupt you. I wanted to let you finish. So I spoke to somebody in the coaching fraternity right after the game. And they know some people that coach at Oregon. And they was telling me, they said, man, I've never heard from another assistant coach of how much information was being given to that staff about, I'm being real with it, about game planning against Colorado so they can beat them. Everybody was stacked. They was
stacking.
That's the reality of it. I ain't making this up. No. I ain't going to disclose no names, but y'all know who I'm talking about if you watch it. So,
right here.
You know.
All right. And now how do you sell this to kids? Do you understand?
Ain't nothing to sell.
You got to tell these kids, dude, listen, there's this other side of all this attention. Everybody is coming to take you out. How do you sell this to kids to raise their game? Because they're the ones feeling the heat on the field.
Yeah, but they're playing against, these coaches are coaching against Deion. They're trying to beat Deion. They don't care about beating the kids. Their focus is, I got to check
the kids are the one that's getting slaughtered, and they get the one
but they got to raise up at some point. You got to take.
Let Richard go.
Go ahead, Rich.
At some point, you got to take some pride. You know what I mean? Especially in that offensive line. Like you said, Shedeur got sacked 7 times. Like, when do you got to bow up? These are human beings, you know? And I'm sure Deion said that to him. Like, I know he's 7, 8 players away, but these are players that was out there. You've seen the underdog come out on top. You've seen guys play above what they're capable of from time to time. And he's going to need that up out of them because every week there's going to be good D-lines, and you can't just accept that this team is better than them. Like you said, Deion takes a lot of pride in what he does. Deion took pride in what happened out there. He couldn't control as much as he's used to controlling, I'm sure. I'm sure if he was out there, he would feel like he would make a difference. I'm sure if Travis Hunter was out there, he would feel like he would make a difference.
If all was out there, we would make a difference. But that's what we're saying. This team was a 1-11 team last year, and now they are facing the pressures that we all face every Sunday to show up and play. You know, and we get paid millions and millions of dollars. These kids, well, they get paid millions too. So now, you know what I mean? Right. So let me back up on that. But the pressures it's serious for these kids. Everybody's coming after them, and everybody's showing up.
But you know Deion better than all 3 of us. And you know he's going to have that conversation with each and one of those kids and let them know this ain't nothing but a bump in the road. You know that. He's not going to sit there, close his door, go sit in his office,
no doubt.
Put the little thing down. You know how they do. They put the little thing down, the curtain, the close it. They don't want to talk to anybody, Skip. That's not going to be Deion. They getting ready to move on to USC. What's happened is happened. We're going to put that tape in the burner, and now we're going to focus in on USC while my guys go out there and look for what I need to be competitive next season.
All right. I'm not going to be a hypocrite about this because I did pick Colorado to win this game 45-42. So I gave Oregon 42, and that's exactly what they scored. Silly me. I thought that Colorado, because they do have weapons even beyond Travis Hunter. Obviously, he was a huge loss on both sides of the ball, maybe even more so on defense than offense. But I thought there was enough firepower, and they have enough dogs, as Lil Wayne says, on both sides of the ball that they could move the football. Well, obviously, they've had trouble all year protecting Shedeur. I'm going to be honest about this. He did not play great football on Saturday. He did not have his best game. He got off wrong-footed right away, and he couldn't get he just couldn't get in the rhythm of the game, and he couldn't. I thought that Mikey Harrison would play a bigger role. I thought Dylan Edwards, and look at their stats. They got nothing. And again, all props to Oregon because they're really good on both sides of the ball. And they dominated the ball on offense with these long drives, so Shedeur didn't have the football a whole lot. But if you come out and you commit 12 penalties for 106 yards, you're not ready to play. Or at least the other team is way readier to play than you are, which they were. So in the big picture of things, Deion said after the game, It wasn't about a big gap in talent. And I think in his heart of hearts, he believes that. They don't have the horses, as Richard points out, offense and defensive lines. Right. But they do have some star power and firepower at other positions that I thought would rise up and level the playing field on Saturday. It did not, in large part because of his pregame speech, because, again, they came out at kickoff and just ran over Colorado, psychologically devastated and dominated from the start, okay? And once it happens, how many times did you guys, you've had those games where you just got crushed. We're about to talk about a team that got crushed.
You can't get up out of it. Yeah. You can't get up out of it, dude. I know we'd have been. You're sitting here. You're seeing it happen. Yeah. And you feel like, man, let's do something to come up out of this. Yeah. And you can't come up out of it.
Not that day.
Not that day until it's until you're in the locker room.
Remember last week what I said? They never faced that type of adversity.
Not like that.
And that was going to be the issue for me, is when they go in there, and if all of a sudden that switch comes on and they can't turn it off, how would they respond? Because they've never had to go on the road, be double digits down, a hostile environment early in the game. It's a different feel. 4 weeks from now, if that ever happened, they respond differently because they've already faced a challenge before, so they know how to respond.
I tell you what, I tell you what, and I talked about this before. That dude, Troy Franklin, I want to do two things here. First of all, let's give that coaching staff some credit. Yeah. Because those kids got outplayed on the football field. But Oregon coaching staff did a great job in out-coaching Colorado's coaching staff. Some of those routes, some of those plays that were running wide open, those are coaches. I put that more on coaching because there's no way a kid should be that wide open and everything. Sometimes you even bust the coverage, or we just caught you in the right coverage and ran a play and took advantage of you. So I got to give them credit.
As Keyshawn said, they got input from coaches all over the country.
All over the country. Now, that's some information right there.
Look, I ain't going to lie to you, Playmaker. I ain't going to give up my sources, but I ain't going to lie to you.
So everybody piling on. That's scary.
Final score in Eugene, Oregon 42, Colorado 6. Feels good today if you're an Oregon Duck fan. You kind of feel like how Dan Lanning felt yesterday. You're fighting for wins and threw some shade now and made the claim that the opposition, more or less, it was implied that they're fighting for clicks. And to do what you did and to have the showing that you had, like I said, probably wake up feeling like you got the right guy as your head coach and feel pretty good about the way that your football team is built. Because all that's going to be said about Colorado, hey, they weren't really that good. Hey, they weren't really this. That's a good football team. And if you did not play your best football, if you had any take your eye off the ball syndrome for the Ducks yesterday, they would have hung around and they would have made it a game and they would have scored points and it could have been interesting in the second half. It wasn't the case. So when it comes to what Oregon did yesterday, I don't know that we learned a ton that was new. Like going into the game, I think some of our suspicions were, hey, Oregon's going to be better on the line of scrimmage. That's their matchup. They should dominate that. They ended up doing that. Hey, when you dominate the line of scrimmage, especially offensively, and you can run the football, guess what else opens up? The pass game. They did that. Bo Nix was dealing. Hey, the defense, personnel-wise, should match up well enough to be able to kind of neutralize this Colorado passing attack. Got to the quarterback multiple times. Held Colorado's leading rusher to 31 yards. Like, it was domination. It was domination start to finish. And I think a lot of people expected that out of Oregon. Now, I was curious about that 23-point spread. I thought Oregon would win the football game. I was not sure about that spread. Oregon very quickly made it clear they were about to handle that spread. So, to be real, Oregon looks like a Tier 1 Pac-12 football team going into this game. Assumed that Oregon would be a Tier 1 Pac-12 football team, will absolutely be in that conference title race and in that conversation in November. You would imagine with that, they will be in the college football playoff conversation and race. And the thing that's encouraging to me about Oregon, on top of the way they looked against Colorado, you can take some things from that and just see the way they're built. Like, this team is extremely well-rounded. I know it was Colorado. I know it wasn't, the most formidable opponent on the line of scrimmage, but even so, the way they dominated up front, I feel really good about them if they have to play a team in the Big Ten in the college football playoff, or they end up playing a team in the SEC. I'm not saying that they have the advantage there. I'm just saying I feel good about them being able to hold their own in that capacity. Now, the major difference in yesterday's game for Oregon from some other games they've played, everybody got to see it. By nature of people having major interest in Colorado, everybody saw what happened yesterday. They got to see Bo Nix sling it around. They got to see the defense dominate. They got to see the weapons do what they did against that Colorado defense. So that's a little bit of a statement now to the rest of the country to kind of put them on notice like, hey, Washington, really good football team. USC, really good football team. Utah, really good football team. Don't forget about Oregon now. Bo Nix, I think, probably did some things for himself in that Heisman Trophy campaign a little bit. And I know those Bodacious shirts probably had a few extra shirts get sold. You only get so many opportunities to have a spotlight like that right now in the Pac-12 conference. I understand it's going to change, and maybe some of that's why you're moving to the Big Ten. But to be able to make good on that spotlight the way that you did has to feel good. And I think ultimately is just a nice little notch in the belt for the Ducks. So yesterday, there was a lot of opportunity, like I said at the top of this segment, for Oregon to kind of take their eye off the ball. Because you're playing a team in Colorado with so much hype and so much excitement around them. And Dan Lanning alluded to it pregame. A lot of clicks are associated with Colorado. It would have been very easy for Oregon to make that game about a lot of things that had nothing to do with the game. Make it a trash-talking thing with Colorado. Make it a thing that's back and forth with them. And I didn't get any sense of that from Oregon. Saw them go out there, handle business, and that's the sign of a mature team. And mature teams play for big things in November, play for big things early in the new year. That's a key ingredient. You don't see immature teams go and play for those kinds of things. You just don't. You can be extremely talented, but if you're not mature, if you don't have a culture and identity in place to go compete for those things, you don't. Just the reality. And I think Dan Lanning, to this point, has established that and built that in Eugene, and you got to be excited about that. Now, when it comes to what Dan Lanning said pregame, I want to make sure we give that its due. Pregame, it's a clip. It's out there for everybody to see. ESPN was in there. Dan Lanning knew ESPN was in there. And he said, listen, man, Cinderella story ends today. Game's not played in Hollywood. It's played on the grass. We're fighting for wins. They're fighting for clicks. Okay? Like he laid it out there for everybody. He made no negotiations about anything. He made it very clear for the entire world. And so, one, if you're a player for Oregon, you love that. For your coach to talk that cash and for you to then have the opportunity to go back it up and for Dan Lanning to have the confidence that his team would back it up takes a little extra something, takes a little bit of that extra edge. And all the good competitors, man, they have that edge. Dan Lanning, his team, they have that edge. So that's encouraging to see. The second part talked about his team being rooted in substance. And it just kind of got me thinking, man, how long have we thought about Oregon as that school with a million uniforms, that school with the Nike money, that school that is really flashy? Like, yes, they still have all those things, but I think with Dan Lanning's Oregon, it's exactly what he said. They're rooted in substance. And substance to me, when it comes to the football field, feels like a line of scrimmage thing, feels like an execution thing. And I understand that this isn't going to be the toughest competition they play the rest of the way. But as long as they continue to be rooted in that substance, I think they're going to have a chance now to do some really, really good things. I think they care about the right things, think they're made of the right things. And I think what Dan Lanning said was absolutely true. And I think it's a mark of the new era at Oregon. It kind of started with Mario Cristobal, and Dan Lanning has kind of taken it upon himself to make it his own. And I say this a lot. Teams take on the persona of their leadership. Dan Lanning, gritty, no nonsense, substance. And that's what Oregon is right now. So again, they're going to have a chance to compete for the Pac-12 title. And when they get to a bowl scenario or a college football playoff scenario against an SEC line of scrimmage or a Big Ten line of scrimmage, I think they're built now in this way to where they can hold their own and make those real games. So I'm excited to watch this the rest of the way. Oregon taking care of business, fought for a win, got a win, and probably as a result now, you would imagine they'll get a fair amount of clicks, too, by nature of what Dan Lanning said.
Dominating performance back here with Boog. You loved everything he had to say. Why?
Listen, I love the messaging because there's a lot going on social media about what he said about we're not here with flash, we're about wins. We're not here for clicks. We're trying to go out and dominate and win the football game. He's talking to his team pregame. Yep. And when we're in the locker room pregame, my job is to get my team motivated, ready to go play. I was in the studio ready to go run through a wall, Kev. So he did his job. That's number one. Postgame. Now let's put it in perspective. We did our job today. Let's get ready to learn from it and move on. He never mentioned Colorado.
Nope.
He never mentioned Deion Sanders. He talked to his team. And that's what great coaches do. That's the reason I love it. Now, we may take the comments when he mentions the word flash and clicks, and we'll associate that with Colorado, but he never mentioned their name. He talked about his football team, and he got his team ready to play. Those guys, when they walked on that field, they were ready to go. And I felt that speech. And as a coach, that's his job, to get his team ready.
To your point, too, also, they got Stanford next week.
Yes.
So he's making sure, let's turn the page.
Exactly.
Because that is a classic letdown, especially when you look at the rest of the schedule for Oregon. In a couple weeks, I should say October 14th, they got Michael Penix and Washington. Then they've got Cam Ward and Washington State. And then they've got potentially Cam Rising and Utah. That's coming up in October.
Bigger games to come, and he realized his team is not going to be measured by what they did against Colorado. It was great. The 3:30 window on ABC was outstanding. Everyone across the country was tuned in. But Dan Lanning came to Oregon to win championships. And in order to do that, he's got to go through a tougher road down the Pac-12 with all those teams you mentioned, Utah and Washington State, other teams that they have to play. He knows that. He's trying to get his team ready.
Shedeur Sanders doing everything he can. Meanwhile, Bo Nix was phenomenal. This was one of those games that, hey, everybody's watching. Where are you in the Heisman conversation? Look at the numbers. I mean, like, doing one thing against Portland State and putting up 81 points, okay. It's just being consistent at 85% completion clip. That is insane.
Yeah, think about this.
80% completion percentage at Oregon, tied with Andrew Luck and Jake Browning for the most by a Pac-12 player in the last 25 years.
He doesn't panic, man. When you play a lot of football, you've seen a lot. We're seeing it now with Brock Purdy, who played all those games at Iowa State. We're seeing it now in the NFL. When you play a lot of football, you don't panic. You stay poised. The moment's never too big. And the Oregon Ducks are reaping the benefits to that.
This is a problem. This is a headline from Sports Illustrated. Maybe you've heard of that outlet. And it says, the college football world, that's you, that's me, the college football world was stunned by Oregon's blowout win over Colorado. A 3-touchdown favorite won a football game handedly. And you were stunned. I was stunned. We weren't stunned. No, we weren't. This is the Deion tax. Those of you who thought I sounded like an idiot last week when I introduced you to the Deion tax were coming in droves to me yesterday in the DMs and saying, wait a second, you were right about this whole Deion tax. The word hater, the word overrated, overhyped, disrespect, I think we need to hit timeout on the use of every one of these words until, as a collective, we learn the definitions of these words. Because a lot of you are throwing out the word hater to describe things that are not hate at all. If I do not root for the same thing you root for, that is not hate. That's just called competition. That's just called entertainment. So, against the backdrop of all this, we had a football game. Oregon, as predicted, rolls Colorado 42-6. It shouldn't have been close. It wasn't close. The same things win in this game that have always won. Now, there are different ways to dress it up. But if you're going to get dominated and overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage to the degree Colorado did yesterday, you will lose 10 times out of 10. There's really no fluctuation there. It's quite beautiful in the brutal simplicity of it all. Colorado never had a shot in this game. They never would have a shot in this game. That includes with Travis Hunter inserted into the lineup. Now, I need to pause, and I need to let you know, because if you're new to our show, it may sound like I'm coming at it from an anti-Buffs point of view. I'm not at all. I'm a massive fan of what Deion's done. What I'm not a massive fan of is this group of folks in my profession. I try not to be one, but there's this group of folks, this little cabal, if you will, of people who know that it's in their best financial interest to generate hype. And that's okay, because we profit off that here as well. I've done a ton of Deion videos. But the difference is there's real money to be made in pumping enough air into a balloon that it pops and then making fun of the balloon for popping because you benefit going and coming. You benefit both ways. You see how that works? I overinflate the expectation level for a team. I overhype a team because I have a massive platform to do it. Then they go bust based on my falsely inflated expectation for them, and then I call them a bust, and I call them fraudulent instead of referring to myself as a fraud. I saw this all over the country yesterday, and it angers me because there's no room for a nuance-based conversation. The nuance-based conversation should sound something like this. Oregon's a top 10 team. Colorado has no business competing with them this year. even as the season started off in an unexpected win against TCU and Nebraska, there still was coming a time where they were badly outmanned at the line of scrimmage, and this was never going to be a competitive game. It wasn't, and it wouldn't be if they played it again next week or the next week or the next week. But what happened, you saw Dan Lanning get real fired up about it. What happened is there was a lot of talk coming from Deion's camp. I'm not saying they don't run their mouth out there. I never minded. As long as you're going to play folks on the field, I don't mind. You say whatever you want to. I think a lot of the animosity and a lot of the wild, just like casual, out-of-this-world takes yesterday were from drive-bys who don't really know anything about this sport, but they know Deion Sanders, and so they just started to run their mouths, a.k.a. the Deion tax, the prime tax, if you will. And then others are just people who want to generate controversy because they don't know anything about football, but they do know this stuff sells. They know that sells, and so they can win in that market. There were padlock stats everywhere in this game. Padlock stats all over the place. Oregon had more first downs than Colorado had total yards in the first half. That is a padlock stat. Shedeur Sanders had 159 yards passing. Now, knowing the style of ball they play at Colorado, we knew Shedeur had to go off. He had to absolutely go off, and that's not going off because they were not going to run the ball effectively. And Oregon had touchdowns on 6 of their first 7 drives. Those were the padlock stats. If I tell you that Friday, you probably don't even need to watch this game. But I don't want to say I told you so because that's played. That's old. But again, I know we get a lot of new traffic on the Colorado videos, so I just want to tell you, you saw a lot of stupid things said yesterday. You probably heard a lot of stupid things. I hope you didn't participate in it on either side of this. But Colin, let's dial it up, and just for the sake of memory, let's go back to last week. I don't know when it's going to happen, whether it's this week against Oregon or next week against USC, but whenever someone does get a good piece of Colorado, you know what's coming. It's going to be so dumb. Some of the conversation is going to be so stupid. You're going to have a bunch of folks saying, I told you so, about Colorado losing a football game when they were supposed to lose, what was the count, 9 of them or 10 of them, according to Vegas? Yeah, shocker if they do lose Saturday. They lost to a top 10 team. Shocker. And here we are. Colorado lost to a top 10 team. Shocker. No, actually, I think the word was stunning in the headline. Fraudulent, that's a word I actually saw yesterday by an esteemed member of the college football media to describe Colorado. Overrated and overhyped, I saw a ton. We call this the recalibration of expectation on this show. I just described it to you. It is people who have really no other ability than to create controversy, and they get to define who you are. Like, that's the entire way that this world works in college football, up to and including ranking systems. That's why I stay away from rankings, and I only do power ratings. They rank you wherever they feel like ranking you, and then when you don't live up to their expectation, they get to call you the failure. What a foolproof system that is. How does anyone ever get fired? How does anyone ever lose their job in this profession? I don't know. So, Dan Lanning went nuclear yesterday. Before the game, during the game, after the game, he went nuclear. And I told you guys in March, and I reiterated it in summer and in fall camp, I knew a lot of coaches didn't really care for Deion Sanders. It didn't bother me because I like Deion Sanders, but if I was a coach, maybe I'd feel a different way about him. This is not a Taylor Swift song. It is not a Disney movie. You don't just get to arrange things in a way that makes you feel good. This is competition at the highest level. These folks are after each other's throat. It's always that way behind the scenes. Deion's a lot more high profile, so when someone just publicly outs themselves as sort of having animosity and no love lost for the other side, maybe it catches your eye and ear a lot more because it pertains to Deion. But dude, Dan Lanning yesterday, when he goes off in that pregame speech and then they start blasting it all over the country, he wasn't saying anything several dozen other coaches don't feel right now. Now, here's the difference. Some people try and inject race into that, and I've dodged it, and I'll continue to dodge it because I think largely it's nonsense. I think there's probably a small sliver of that conversation that is fueled by people who just don't like Deion Sanders because of the color of his skin. I think there is a huge, like 95% chunk of that pie of people who don't like him, if they don't, for reasons that have nothing to do with the color of his skin. I had someone tell me the other day, they said, Josh, you know why I don't like Deion Sanders? I said, why is that? Because he reminds me of Johnny Manziel. And I said, do tell, although I knew where they were going with that. Little anecdote there, but it is possible to just have a guy who possesses characteristics you don't like. That is possible. But in the coaching industry, when you see what Deion's doing, and then you're going to face him, and I'm in my hotel Friday night, and I'm watching Lanning on SportsCenter, and he gets asked like 7 questions about Deion. I said, oh no. Oh, no. And then Saturday, there he is. It is like someone pulled the cord on Dan Lanning's back, and they let that thing go. And finally, you kind of heard the Dan Lanning, some folks behind the scenes know. That's him. That's him. He's been really good up to this point in his career of handling himself in a way that is aesthetically pleasing from a strict PR perspective. But I'm not a fan of it. I'm a fan of raw. I'm a fan of you giving me whoever you are. Same reason I love Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is not produced, as we would say in our business, at all. You just get Deion Sanders. There's very little filter at all. I'd love it if every coach was like that, because I don't get offended by anything. So I don't really care what anyone says, as long, and this is the condition, as long as the folks you talk about, you have to play. As long as they're on your schedule. I don't want to hear Sam Pittman's thoughts on Deion Sanders right now, because they're not going to play. But I have no problem hearing Deion's thoughts on Lanning, Lanning's thoughts on Deion. I got no problem with it. I kind of have no problem with any of it. No one got hurt yesterday by those words. Everybody's okay. Deion Sanders didn't seem fractionally as outraged about it as other people who have nothing to do with it did. It's kind of like a couple of weeks ago or last week when they played Colorado State. There were folks calling for the Colorado State safety to lose a scholarship, and Deion steps to the podium and says, no, he made a football play. He made an error in judgment. He got flagged for it. We forgive him. Travis Hunter forgives him. We should move on. No, get him. Why are you more outraged than he is? Same thing yesterday. Football game happened. Colorado got splattered. Deion Sanders said, we got to learn from it. We got to get back to work. Dan Lanning was all fired up. That's it. That's competition. That's what it is. And I'm looking over here on this iJosh, and I got folks fired up like they had skin in the game. You don't have more skin in the game than either of them do. So I don't know what Dan Lanning will sound like Monday at his press conference. I wouldn't be apologetic for anything. I'd do the same thing Ryan Day does. I'd walk in my locker room, and if those dudes were receptive to my message, I couldn't care less what anyone thinks outside my locker room. Burn the bridge. Burn the bridge. Some of these folks who you kind of seek affirmation from, you don't need. You don't need. At the end of the day, an upset sports writer or an upset television commentary or host, it's just that. It's an upset writer or an upset host. They have nothing to do with whether you win or lose a game. As for the Pac-12 right now, it's insane. It's competitive out there. The season is long. We're not even in October yet. We're not even through September yet. And it feels like the Colorado story has already gone 57 different directions. But we got Utah, who I'll talk about later, in the thick of it. We got Southern Cal. We got Oregon, Washington. Washington State kind of stunned me last night. I'll talk about them later too. UCLA, I think, will still make some noise. Oregon State is in this thing. It is such a deep conference right now. And I wonder if in a month and a half, some teams have separated themselves, or if it still just looks that competitively balanced. Because the odds right now to win that conference, we still got 4 teams plus 600 or better. And that's USC, Oregon, Washington, and Utah. It's an amazing conference to watch right now. So that's how I feel about that currently. Like, I also have learned this. I have learned it's kind of impossible to talk about Colorado or Deion Sanders and expect everyone to actually listen to what you said, because it's not going to happen. People are going to hear about 2 or 3 words into your first sentence, and then they're just going to start typing. So I expect that in the comment section. And quite frankly, maybe I even welcome it.
Pre-game, you told your team, we're not playing for clicks, we're playing for wins. What kind of message do you feel like your team sent with this win?
Yeah, they're ready to get better. They're hungry to get better. We're certainly not satisfied, right? This is one game. Now we're on to the next one. We got to focus on the next one. There's a lot that we can improve from that game. Fun, energetic on the field, but our guys have a standard to uphold.
How would you describe the defense's performance this afternoon?
They did a good job. They did a good job. You can't overshadow that, right? We're going to face some elite teams. We get to play great quarterbacks in this conference right now. So we're certainly some to get better on, but they did a good job today. They upheld the standard.
Congratulations on a great win.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Go Ducks. All right. Absolutely tremendous job by our crowd today. You know, you talk about what Autzen, that experience can be like. And it was phenomenal. It was beyond phenomenal. It's what I love about this place so much. We have passionate fans, more passionate fans than anybody else in the nation. We were prepared for a battle. It didn't end up being a battle, but I've also been on the other end of this before too. And I think that team's heading in the right direction. I think coach is doing a phenomenal job. Obviously he's brought great enthusiasm and, response from his players. And I know that they'll bounce back from this game moving forward. On the same note, I get a little passionate at times, right? I get a little excited about what I want to accomplish for our team. And I just want to say, I need to humble myself a little bit. This is one game, right? And I'm not satisfied. So I just told our players, we're about to go play great quarterbacks. We're about to go play great teams moving forward. And it's about how good we can become, right? It's not really about who we play. And it's about Oregon versus Oregon every week. I felt like this was a complete game, offense, defense, and special teams. Didn't create a takeaway on defense, I don't believe, but had some big plays in all three phases. We're dominant in all three phases. I thought you could watch our team and say, well, they have an identity in all three phases. So preparing for the next one, ready to go back to work for Stanford. I know that they'll be ready. This will be a road game. We didn't play as well on the road earlier this year. It's time for us to show what we can do on the road moving forward, so we can open it up with questions.
Pre-game speech became pretty popular after it got aired on the telecast. How long have you been sitting on that one? And in general, how do you think your players did handling the outside noise and the distractions?
I thought they handled it well. I thought they handled the focus well. We do a pre-game speech every week. I guess there was a camera in there this time, right? So doesn't really change our approach. And we'll always have a message for our team. Sometimes it's to get them fired up. Sometimes we don't necessarily need the brimstone, right? But our guys, there is no speech that wins games. Players win games, right? Our players went out there and they won the game, right? Our players went out there and executed. Our players went out there and decided to make a decision to have poised, right? Be focused, right? Play with their pads and not with anything else. And that's what I'm proud of, right? Making that decision. It's an us decision, right? It's not a me decision.
No doubt a lot of eyeballs on this one. What impression do you think that Bo might have made on everybody who was watching?
We got the best quarterback in the nation, right? I know that. I can see that. It's like, again, you see all the plays that he throws and all the plays he makes with his feet, but you guys don't see all the checks that he makes. You don't see what he does for this team. You don't see his leadership. And he sent a text this morning to me that was like impactful for me. That guy shapes me, right? That guy makes me a better person. And we got that guy on our team, so we're so blessed to have him.
Damn, and the message was substance and not flash. What does it feel like that you won the way that you did and with so much attention that's been generated by them and you having to answer a lot of things about them? What does it mean to you personally as a coach and for your program to be the first to hand them a loss?
Yeah, I'm not hung up on that. If you're really about substance, what you're really hung up on is what's next, right? And what's next for our players. I'm glad that we got to put Oregon in the light that Oregon deserves to be in. But it's really not about anything else other than our team, right? And getting our team ready to go play. And now we gotta go get ready for the next one, right? We don't need to be the team that's reading the newspaper articles, right? We don't need to be the team that's following Twitter because we didn't follow it this week. So we're certainly not going to look at it next week, right? We have to, again, humble ourselves, including myself, including our staff, and focus on what's next.
I feel like your team's being a little disrespected or not talked enough about just how good you guys are coming into this week?
I don't care how much anybody talks about us, but if we can ever find fuel for the fire, we'll certainly use it.
Why was that the right time for the fake punt, and why was Casey the right player to carry the ball there?
Because we've probably ran that thing 47 times in practice, right? And the right times when they don't think it's coming, right? And we had some momentum. I have tremendous belief in our defense that time. They've been operating at a really high level, right? But I'm not really interested in running fake punts when everybody thinks we're going to run a fake punt, right? You kind of want to hit them when they don't suspect it.
For both sides of the ball, how you dominated the line of scrimmage, what that says about this team, and maybe any statements that were made.
I just think it says if you want to have a winning team, a successful team, it starts up front, right? Every game starts up front, and it started up there for us today.
All we have for you, Coach.
All right, have a good one.
Congrats on the win.
Go Ducks.
Go Ducks.